Hi, welcome everybody. I'm really excited to be interviewing Joanna Penn. I admire her. First off, before I get into the intro, I want to say I admire her so much. I've known her for years, and we were talking before the interview that it's really weird that you know people in social media, but you don't always see them all the time, but you feel like they do. And Joanna has written 15 books. She's a USA Today, a New York Times best-selling thriller author, and is now doing stuff to help authors succeed, which I think is so fantastic because for years, genre fiction was this it was like, oh, well, it's just really hard to market fiction, and Joanna has proved that is it is work, but it's not impossible. And she has a great site, thecreativepenn.com, which we share a lot of your blog posts because you've got just so much great information on there. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Penny. It's always lovely to talk to you.
So right out of the gate, talk to us a little bit about the new book that you have out and why you decided to publish it.
I have two books out this month, one fiction, one non-fiction. So the one I actually have out today is called Deviance, which is the final book in my London Psychic trilogy. And we can come back to marketing that in a minute because that might be interesting. But my non-fiction book, How to Make a Living with Your Writing, I basically wrote because, there's a lot of books on how to write a book. There's lots of books, including your wonderful book on marketing, about marketing. But I feel like we're in this space where being an indie author, self-publishing is coming into an early maturity, as in, it's kind of accepted now that self-publishing can be brilliant for a lot of people. And then it's like, okay, suddenly you're making enough money to say, quit your job. So people, so I left my job three and a half years ago now to do this full time. And then you actually have to run a business. So to me, the How to Make a Living with Your Writing is about teaching authors how they can take that next step. It's about, okay, so either you have, your first book and you want to make a living with your writing, so you need to know how you can do that. So the multiple streams of income, I talk about mobile, digital, global, all the different opportunities for you to make multiple streams of income, and then really how to make that transition. So that's why I wanted to write the book, is to just help people make that next step to, if you want to, you can make a living with your writing.
So you have so many books out and they do so well, and I see you everywhere. But is there, and I know you're going to hate this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is there one marketing thing that you do that you say, this works better than anything else that I do?
Well, like you said, that's a tough question. Again, I think let's just take it as read that everybody needs an email list. I think that's like the obvious. Let's just accept that as a baseline, and they've got a good book and an email list. But then on top of that, for fiction, it's definitely paid advertising. So BookBub. I've just done today, BookBub, Bargain Booksy, Buck Books, there's a whole load of these. So putting money into paid advertising, Facebook ads, for fiction can really move the needle, especially if you focus on first in a series. So if you promote first in a series, with free books or cheaper books, then get people into your funnel, they will follow through. So for fiction, that's kind of what I found to work, which is awesome because at the end of the day, it's actually great to just spend some money and have an effect rather than spending 6 months of your life, blogging and things. But right. For non-fiction, it's quite different. So, and it's difficult for me. I mean, I would say right now podcasting is fantastic, but podcasting really has only taken off in the last year. We're in 2015 as we talk. I started my podcast in 2009. So, and I have nearly, 250 episodes. So for me, the podcast has always been good, but recently it's just gone nuts. And, whereas there's so many text blogs out there, podcasting can still reach people and you've got much more quality time with people. You might spend half an hour talking about your stuff rather than just, people scanning a blog post or one little social media blast. So I would say for authors, if you can get onto podcasts, but they've got to be in the right niche and you have to pitch the podcaster well, then that would probably be my number one for nonfiction right now.
Okay. And the other thing that I think really helps your fiction is obviously the covers are fantastic. The covers are amazing. And if people don't think that readers judge a book by its cover,
they totally do. And also title. I mean, I think we totally underestimate title and cover and blurb. I mean, again, these are fundamentals that you teach. You know, you have to have and categories and keywords and all the metadata. But I mean, I recently, and I think this is both a pro and a con of being an indie. You can do anything you like, and you can do anything you like. When I started out, my first book was called Pentecost, my first fiction, and I recently rebranded that as Stone of Fire, changed the title, changed the cover, just did, and for my first 3 books. So Pentecost became Stone of Fire, Prophecy became Crypt of Bone, and Exodus became Ark of Blood. So because I'm in a conspiracy thriller niche, and they sounded like Christian fiction, but they're not Christian fiction. They're based on religious history, like Dan Brown, but no one's going to say Dan Brown is Christian fiction, right?
Right.
So I had made a mistake. And I say mistake, we all, we just keep learning, right?
Yeah.
But by rebranding as Stone of Fire, for example, and having a new cover, same book, it reaches a different market than before. When I used to get 1-star reviews that said, this is not a Christian book. And it never was a Christian book. Do you see what I mean? So I totally agree with you on the covers. And thank you. I love my covers too. And yeah, I pay a professional designer. But I also think the title, I think fiction author, I mean, for nonfiction, it's obvious. Have an SEO title, search engine optimized title that your readers are looking for on the search engine that is Amazon. For fiction, it is quite different. And I think you have to have an emotional resonance with the genre and also with language. So romance, great example. Many romance books will have the word love or kiss or, positive feelings. And for my genre, so strong words like stone of fire, crypt of bone, and, strong words that evoke that kind of big scale that thrillers are on, and with a little bit of darkness. So my London Psychic series, desecration, delirium, deviance, again, strong words.
Right.
Yeah, that give an idea of what the books are about. They're not romance.
Right, exactly. But now, do you feel that that writing a series has also helped you?
Oh yeah, there are so many recommendations, but if you want to make money with fiction, I would say that you have to write a series because, think about, you can see it in traditional publishing. I mean, look at Kathy Reichs, like she's on number 24. James Patterson, who we were talking about earlier, he has like so many, and like I think his Alex Cross again is in a 20th something book. If you look at the authors who are long-term writers, there are some people who are not, like Stephen King would be an example, but mostly what you want to do is hook your readers into a series, and the binge consumption culture. So box sets, people love box sets, whether it's watching the whole of Game of Thrones over a weekend. If they discover you have a book and they love it, like that's why I do free promotion on book 1 in the series. If they love it, they're going to buy all 7. I have 7 in the Arcane series and 3 in the London Psychic series. They're going to buy all of them. So and if you only have 1 book, however much marketing you do, they can still only buy 1 book. And this is the problem with a lot of literary fiction. Most literary novelists will write lots of standalones. So somebody might love 1 book, but they might hate another book. But if you've got the same character, they'll cross over. So yes, I think a series is really important. And for nonfiction, another little tip, make up a nonfiction series title. So books for authors, for example, and use that to link your nonfiction together if it's in the same target market, because you can use the same series functionality that Amazon offers now, where it says read the next in series, if you link them together with that series field.
That's such a great idea, especially because I do agree with you. The series is, and I was at Romance Writers last week. Everybody, that's all that they were talking about. Is just the series and the importance of the series. How do you feel about this new trend of shorter books, so books that are 27,000 words. What is your take on that? Because a lot
I
of people
don't
are talking about that it's so popular and it's a trend.
Yeah, so I don't think it's a trend because if you look at any of the Penguin classics from, back from the 40s and 50s, they were all novellas. I mean, if you look at some of the most classic works of literature, they were short. The only reason books became really big is because of shelf space and because publishers, the spine out kind of standing out in the market, So, I mean, that's one thing. So it's nothing new. Serials, Charles Dickens was the biggest serial writer. He used to serialize his books, his works in magazine. So serials and shorter books, this is nothing new. What is why everyone went nuts about it is because of the way that the KDP Select thing worked last year.
Right.
But again, that has now changed. So that tactic of writing shorter books and getting your KDP Select payout out of a shorter book has changed. But I love novellas, and I've written 3 fiction novellas, and How to Make a Living with Your Writing is a short book. It's 27,000 words. I do think people like short works because with fiction, you can kind of munch through it like an episode of something. And with nonfiction, you just get to the meat of it without putting a whole load of padding, which, let's face it, there's enough books out there that are full of a load of crap. So just, cut. You don't have to put the filling in. You can still charge $4.99 for a short book, as I have done for some of mine, because of the value. I don't believe you can do $4.99 novella for fiction, but you probably can for non-fiction. But yes, I think, as a writer, I love the shorter books because you can hold it all in your head. You can get it done faster. And my novellas are the day series. So One Day in Budapest and Day of the Vikings and One Day in New York. And they're all like really short time span. So that kind of makes sense for my thriller audience. But like H.M. Ward in romance, she's like on book 24 or something. They're all short. So I think you can definitely do it. It still has to be satisfying to the reader, as in it still has to hang together as a story, or it still needs to be good value. But personally, I have novellas, I have full-length books, I have box sets, and I think box sets, again, people think they might be a trend. They're not a trend. They should be part of your author business. So as soon as you have 3 books in a series, I would put them in a box set. And another little tip for people, if you want to go wider on Kobo and iBooks, you can get a higher royalty rate and have it over $9.99. So I have box sets that I only sell on Kobo and iBooks, and I can put them at $13.99 and still get a 70% royalty. But you can't do that on Amazon because they have the $9.99 limit. So I just have all of these different things, and it's one of my tips for making a living with your writing is to write different lengths, in short, full length box set, and also in multiple genres.
So let's talk about how to make a living as a writing, make a living as an author. What do you think is the biggest misstep? And I know you and I sort of talked about this a little bit, but are there 1 or 2 mistakes that authors make in terms of wanting to make a living but falling short of it?
I think the first thing is this myth that the publishing industry has. I don't even know why it's a myth, but everybody has it, that you can write 1 book and you can make $1 million. And I mean, I'm sure I thought it too. I'm pretty sure that when you come into the industry as a fresh-faced writer, that's what you think happens. And the only reason you think that is because of the press. So you hear about the breakout successes, but actually, if you look behind their story, they're often 10-year overnight successes anyway. And even if their first book in the traditional industry, their first book makes $1 million, they've actually got 10 books in the drawer that they've either written and had rejected and haven't ever got published. So for indies, often the 10 books that haven't made you any money might be the first 10 you self-published, and then the 11th is like, oh wow. So certainly, I was telling you earlier, the first 3 books I wrote are now unpublished, partly because they're out of date, partly because I've become a better writer. So over time, obviously, the more books you write, you improve. So that would be my first rookie mistake, is don't think that it's about 1 book. And everyone's like, oh, I've written the book. That's not special. Unfortunately, I mean, congratulations. But I talk about the arc of the indie author, and at each point in the journey, there's another challenge. So, when you're writing a book, the challenge is actually writing it. And then when it goes live, when you've got a book, then you have to market it. And then you have 3 books. And then it's like, I've got so much to do and how do I juggle my life? So there's different challenges at different points in the journey. Yeah, and I also, for me, it's very much about multiple streams of income. So although I do counsel new authors to just use KDP Select if they have fewer than 3 books, for me, making a living as an author is about going wide, so going on all platforms, going global. So I've sold books in 68 countries now, and that is just in English. So,
Right.
doing multiple formats, so ebook, print, audiobook, and lots of other tips. I've actually got a free video if people are interested, 11 ways to make money as an indie author, which is at thecreativepenn.com/freedom. And I go into those 11 ways there, and it's like a 45-minute video. So but people can go
That's
watch
great.
that.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
great. If you want to email me the link, I'll put it in the video when we
Oh,
put this up
okay.
on
Will do.
when we put this up on YouTube. No, because I think that's fantastic. And I also think, and I don't know, you're probably too modest to say this, but as somebody who works with authors and having watched you over the years, you really do not give up. Like, you are out there and doing your thing, and you're knocking on doors, and some doors go open and some doors close, and you keep knocking. And I think that's also the thing that makes the successful author from the author who publishes one book and forgets about it.
Mm. Well, I think the difference is, what do you want to do with your life? And I think some people, writing a book is the end. As in, once they've published the book, that's the end of what they want to do with it. Some people don't get the bug, but I got the bug very much. And like, if you talk to most professional authors who have more than one book, you said when you were asking the question, so the book you've just launched, I'm thinking, which book was that? Because I'm already writing, the next books. I've got like 3 other books on the go right now. I'm doing a whole load of other stuff. So there's always more, and there's so many ideas. So I think the people who give up, or, there are brick walls everywhere, and you only get through the brick wall if this is what you want to do with your life. So for me, this isn't just one book. This is my life. This is not just my career, it's my hobby, it's my passion. It's what I want to do until I die. And also because, copyright 70 years after the death of the author, I'm building a company that I can hand on to my heirs and successors that will make money for them after I die. So for me, this is something I'm building. Hopefully, I mean, I'm 40. Hopefully I'll live another 60 years. And then, we're talking about like 130 years of earning money from what I write every day. Now, I just find that so exciting, and that's what drives me. It's like this longevity and this creating new stuff in the world every day. For me, it's the most exciting thing. And for many people, it's not the most exciting thing. So, go do what turns you on in life, and you can see this is what turns me on.
Well, and it's also too, I mean, what you do is a great entertainment. So you're entertaining people, and that must be great when you get readers that write you and say, "Oh, Joanna, I loved this book."
It is. And it's so interesting with fiction and non-fiction. I feel fiction is very selfish in that I go into my space and I write what I want to write. And I'm just telling the story that just comes out. So it's like a selfish time. But then, as you say, the result then entertains people. Whereas with non-fiction, I'm always thinking about who I'm writing for and educating and inspiring. So, and I need to do both. Like, I know some people are just fiction or just non-fiction. I feel like I need to do both because of that education, entertainment, inspirational mix.
Well, and it's also because when I read How to Make a Living with Your Writing, I mean, it wasn't pie in the sky. It was very grounded. It was very much like just having a conversation with you. And I highly recommend the book. But I also think that you've seen the mistakes that are out there. And one of the things that I always get from your blog is, if you can prevent somebody from spending a lot of time doing a whole lot of nothing, I
Mm.
think that's a great service.
Yeah, well, and I've tried everything. I mean, I do everything and I try everything. Actually, one thing I would say is try not to do what I've done. Which, unless you really love it all. I mean, I've built a YouTube channel, I've built an audio podcast, I've built a text blog, I've built Twitter, I'm trying now to build Facebook. It is very difficult to do everything. I think, if I was starting out now, I would say to people, look, if you want to start a podcast, just start a podcast. You don't need to do text blogging as well, or you could post transcripts, for example. Don't try and split yourself into everything. That would probably be my main advice. I think I tried to do so much early on when what I see people succeeding faster is just focusing, So if you want to do Facebook. Don't bother with Twitter so much. Like you and I love Twitter, right? I know you do Facebook as well, but I mean, Twitter has always been my thing, and that's how we met, right? We met on Twitter, 5 years, 6 years ago, and so I won't give that up. In fact, if they ever make it a paid platform, you and I will probably pay, right? Because
I love
we
Twitter.
love it.
Yeah.
But like YouTube, I just started for a laugh, and it's built into 6,000 odd subscribers, so I carry that on because it would be silly to stop it, but it becomes difficult to then focus on all of these things when they all start taking off. So I would really advise, like, try and decide what you want and decide what you enjoy, and then focus hard on that.
Well, and I think that's great advice, because so often authors publish a book and they hop on all these social media platforms and they're everywhere, and it doesn't make sense for them. I mean, find one thing and be really good at that one thing, and then move on to something else, because otherwise it's too fragmented.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. Have get pages on all those sites if you want, but redirect them all to your website and your email list sign up, and don't try and be active everywhere. It's just crazy. I think some people can get away with outsourcing their social media. Certainly non-fiction authors. It depends. If you're being a curated channel like I have, tweeting useful stuff, tweeting stuff in the niche, I think you can get away with outsourced social media. But I think you also, even if you outsource most of it, you still need to pop in and have your personality. I think the biggest thing right now is the internet in general sees through fake stuff in a second. And they know if it's a company, and a company, people don't want a company. They want you in all your, they want your mistakes. That's why YouTube vloggers has gone nuts. People want authenticity and real life, and the fact that I look like this and you look like that, and we're not like hiding ourselves, or just being ourselves. And I think that means so much more to people. So for me, I mean, you got to, and what I've always done is, if people know you, like you, and trust you, they are far more likely to buy your book, and to do that, you can only be yourself.
Right, exactly. And I think that's a big point. And that's something that, be genuine in whatever it is that you do. Just be genuine, because your audience, I found anyway, will respond to that. They respond to that genuine, and especially passion, because like sitting here talking to you on this video, you adore what you're doing. And I think that hopefully will inspire people that watch this to, get that same fire. Because there's something amazing about being in this industry, especially right now.
Yeah, and I think some people are scared of it, and the pace of change is such that if you don't enjoy change, you're gonna struggle. Like, you do have to. There are new things every day. So you either have to ignore the shiny objects or embrace the shiny objects and run with them, I get really excited about the future stuff. There's a brilliant book by Peter Diamandis called Abundance. Have you read that?
No, I haven't.
It's an amazing book talking about the next 10 years, 10, 20 years. The fact that, and actually today it was on the news, the Facebook, the drones that they're doing, Facebook, Google, Virgin, the internet, they're bringing the internet to the world. There's going to be 8 billion new internet buyers, online in the next couple of years. Now that will transform, why concentrate just on the US? This is my issue with US authors, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. you're so focused on the US that you forget that there's the rest of the world. And okay, you've got, 280 million people, but there's like 9 billion on the planet. So what about India, China, Sub-Saharan Africa, South America, Europe? I mean, if you're not thinking about where the business is going, and yes, the book ebook market, for example, in America is mature, but the rest of the world has hardly even started. I mean, that to me is so exciting. So and the fact that people are going to shop on their cell phones, most of these countries don't have laptops or desktops. They do everything on the cell phone. So if you're not on the cell phone, you're going to miss out on that type of thing. So for me, the stuff that's coming is really exciting. I mean, Google Auto, Apple CarPlay, the fact that streaming audio and audiobooks next year, 2016, it's going to go boom. I mean, like podcasting this year, it's going to, so getting into audiobooks, to me, this is exciting. I know some people will be like, what's she talking about? But this is the industry we're in, and it's like, embrace it and run with the change. It's fun.
And you have a number of your books are already in audio, right?
Yeah, so I have 7 fiction in audio and 1 non-fiction. So yeah, and I've done used Audible, acx.com, and I love doing joint ventures with narrators. So you can pay up front, or you can do a joint venture where it doesn't cost the rights holder, and you split the royalties 50-50. So I really like that, and so it's kind of I like the collaboration aspect of that, and it gets the book out.
Right, exactly. Now, you've narrated your own books too, right? Have you?
Yes, I did Business for Authors, How to Be an Author Entrepreneur, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I think what's really important to remember, so for example, the way we're being now, this is a mini performance, right?
Right.
I don't go around this animated all the time. I am an introvert. I would just fall over. So, I'm bringing it for the video. And in the same way, if you do an audiobook, you have to bring your energy, because your voice communicates so much by tone and smile. You can tell if I'm smiling even if you're not watching the video. So in narrating your own book, it's actually so hard. And I think because of the breathing, you have to breathe in a certain way. Otherwise, you just end up kind of hyperventilating. And went to a studio in like one of those boxes, and hardest thing I think I've done in a long time, doing my own audiobook. So I'm not sure I'll be doing another one.
But they're doing well for you.
Yeah, they are. But, the rest of them are by a professional voice talent. So you can just go on acx.com and find a narrator. That's probably the best thing for most people, unless you love that kind of performance aspect, or if you've got a lovely, lovely voice. Like I met just a lovely older African-American man who had that lovely kind of deep black voice. Right. And I was like, you've got to narrate your books because your voice is awesome. But that doesn't happen often.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't happen often. And if you're doing fiction, because I've talked to a lot of authors who are tempted to narrate their own fiction books, you had better be an actor.
Oh, I wouldn't do fiction. I only do non-fiction. No, fiction. I mean, fiction, you don't have to do voices and everything, but you have to be good at telling the story. So no, I wouldn't do my own fiction. That's kind of really scary.
Would you ever consider for your non-fiction doing dual voices? Doing, having different actors, because I just finished the audio version of The Girl on the Train. Amazing.
Oh, okay.
But there were 3 or 4 different actors that were reading that book.
But that's because it has different points of view.
Yes. Just like Gone Girl did the same thing. They did the male and female.
Yeah.
Would you ever consider doing the 2-actor for your book?
Well, I think, not for fiction. No, I mean, what you're talking about there is actually an audiobook production. Yeah. Very, very different and very expensive. And they only do that for the biggest books. I wouldn't expect any indie author to do that unless there is a guy, J. Daniel Sawyer. Actually, he's over in California as well. He, in the early days of podcast fiction, sort of 10 years ago, it must be 8 years ago. And people like Scott Sigler, who's doing it, still doing it. A lot of people people were doing these voice productions for fun. It was never about the money. And now audiobooks have become so big. But it's very difficult to split the royalties between lots of people unless it's just been paid for by a company. So I'd certainly say for indies, that would be hardcore.
Yeah. That would be very hard. They were talking about it somewhat at Romance Writers of America about having dual talent. And I thought, it's wonderful. Like, I couldn't stop listening to Girl on the Train. Just because it was mesmerizing with all the different talent, but it was just, it's got to be
super expensive. And I think this is one of my things in how to make a living, with your writing, is very much look at your business model. And if you want to make a living, you have to weigh things up. So for example, lots of people are going nuts about, getting indies, getting their physical books into bookstores. I just don't even pursue that. I have print on demand, and I love having print, but I do print on demand. My energy is better spent marketing ebooks, where I make 88% of my income, and now 88% of my book income. And and the growth in audiobooks, for example, for me is a higher royalty than a print book, for example. Non-fiction, I do make better money on print, but you have to decide, what is the best use of your time in terms of making an income. And audiobooks, if you pay for a production like that, say you've paid $5,000, how long is it going to take to get that money back? How many books do you have to sell to make $5,000 back? Whereas I prefer the joint venture approach, where I've paid nothing and I just get royalties. So I'm very much a fan of paying professionals and getting, making the money back, doing your P&L, your profit and loss per book. So I would definitely assess that as a not right now. Translations are another thing. Like for me, I've got a few translations. They've just not been worth it financially.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you mentioned that, because there was talk about, this in that ebooks are probably 2 or 3 years from really exploding in Europe.
Yes.
UK is
obviously
very different.
Germany, you're right, it's about 2%. The problem in Europe right now is regulations and taxes on ebooks. There's no, in Britain, there's no VAT on print, but there is a value added. It's like a sales tax. There's no sales tax on print books. There is on ebooks.
Right.
It's crazy. So what they're doing, the industry is trying to hold down digital, but as soon as, around the world, these things will change, and then we'll see ebooks take off. And also, I think it's just the maturity in the market. People, you've got to, like that future state thing, stop thinking that now is what it's going to look like in a year's time. A year ago, I didn't have any income from audiobooks, and now I've made a couple of grand, not spectacular. But a year ago, I had no income from Japan. This year, it's up $200. Again, not spectacular. But if it keeps going at this kind of growth, where are you going to be in a couple of years? So this is why I'm excited about this type of stuff. It's the, skate where the puck is going type of quote.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, it's interesting that you mentioned Japan, because we have a fiction author, and she called me the other day and she said, I'm selling books in Japan and my book is not translated. And that's an interesting thing. And that's one of the things that they were talking about, is that, a lot of straight English books without translation are selling in Germany and in Belgium and in France and obviously in Japan.
Well, and also, think about in India, there are more English speakers in India than there are in Europe, I believe, and also in China. And they are the educated Indians and Chinese who have money. So actually, there's these massive English-speaking markets around the world. I'm selling books now, in Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Namibia. These are places that some people might not have heard of, but there are English speakers there who are buying my ebooks on Kobo. This is kind of crazy, but this is the world we live in. And of course, with digital marketing, you put out something on the internet, you don't know where people are going to be finding that. And so having your book available around the world is so important, because if people find, you in South Korea, they can actually buy your book, for example.
Yeah, exactly. So think think global markets, because
Mm.
at some point, you're right, it is going to explode internationally
Oh,
with the ebook stuff.
just another little tip,
Yes.
because I'm sure some people listening, if you have sold rights to traditional publishers, check your contract to see if you sold World English, because if you didn't, say you only sold US Canada, you can self-publish in the rest of the world. So you could, if you only sold US Canada, you could publish in England, you can publish in Europe, you can publish everywhere else. So, check you might be sitting on cash because you haven't sold all your rights away. Or for example, if you haven't sold audiobook rights, but you sold print and ebook, go do your audiobook. So I think authors forget that they can exploit all the different rights. If, for example, if you sold audiobook rights, but they haven't actually done one, see if you can get them back. Actually be looking proactively at what are the different rights that you can exploit.
That is a great piece of advice. Joanna, thank you so much for being with me here. Do send me that link. I want folks to see that interview with you, and the tips. And the book is how to make a living with your writing, which I've got up on Amazon right now, and it's just such a great book. I highly recommend it.
Oh, thanks so much, Penny. It was lovely talking to you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for being on with me. Bye.